to the place where singles shine, celebrating life, divine by design. In faith and love, we intertwine. Route 77, where your journey's prime.
Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. Today we are diving into a lively discussion on singleness and self-perception. Join us today as we explore the nuances of what it means to be single, the attitudes we might adopt, and how our faith should shape our view of ourselves and others. Stay tuned as we unpack the idea that being single doesn't mean we're better or worse off, but it does offer a unique opportunity to reflect Christ's love and humility. Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I'm your host, Natasha, and I am here with Monique.
Hello.
And David.
Hello.
Yes. And I was scrolling through TikTok because that's healthy. Yeah. I don't do a lot on TikTok, but want to see what people are talking about on TikTok. I feel like I come across a similar sentiment as I go through it, that they're all very different, but there's this idea that people, it almost feels like overcompensating for the fact that they're single, in the sense where they're often going, of course I love being single, there's no one who can handle me. Or I love being single because I can just focus all on me. And it just sounds like almost like you're overcompensating for the fact that you're single. And I know we have done an episode on some of the pitfalls of being single, but I don't think it's bad to revisit some of these things and to just understand while we are singles ministry, we're never saying that singleness is better than marriage and marriage is not better than singleness. But sometimes when we're trying to convince people of this, we can either develop an attitude that's not appropriate or we can come off as an attitude of somehow that we're better off. And I just want to encourage people to just like really look within and try to understand, are you trying to convince others or even yourself that you're in a better place? Or are you actually living in a better place than if you were wishing you were married? Like you're in a healthier place, living a healthier life.
I went to both sides. There was once upon a time when I said, I'm just too smart. People can't handle me. I'll date a guy and then I'm too intimidating. They just can't deal with me. That was before. Then I got to the point where I'm just too ugly. Nobody loves me anymore.
And then, yeah.
Oh, I'm not cute no more.
That's why you find like a blind boyfriend or husband.
It's all about personality then, right?
Yep.
I have a great personality. She's got a great personality. You know what that means, right? Y'all know what that means when they say she's got a great personality. She's not much to look at, but she got a great personality. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Right.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll find you someone, David. Don't worry.
I'm not holding my breath.
It's all good. Too funny.
But I guess,
no, I used to.
Yeah. There's that thing about, people just can't handle me. I'm just all that in a bag of chips. I've got too much of an attitude, or I'm too smart, or I'm too much of a go-getter, or I'm too much of a leader, or I'm too much of something that people can't handle it. And I'm like, is that really the kind of attitude we want to be like? I don't know. That doesn't seem to me like what Jesus was doing. Just walking around going, no one can handle me.
That would drive people away.
Yeah.
I just too much for y'all.
Yeah, it is. That's why I'm single.
I'm warned of this too, because Proverbs states that this is a endeavor. That pride will go before destruction. The arrogance will lead to pride and then to destruction and then so forth.
Especially like if that's what you're going around telling people. I know TikTok's about a lot of flaunting and that's part of the persona people put on. But is that really the kind of attitude we want to foster as a single person and be like, I'm just waiting until someone can handle me? I don't know. It just seems like
a weird thing to say
around. Yeah. I'm very difficult to get along with. I'm like, I don't know. That's what it feels like I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, right?
So is really what Christ is calling us to do be too much for people?
They say that you can catch a lot more flies with honey than vinegar.
He seemed to have a lot of people coming to be with him.
His personality of love, gentleness, kindness, the Galatians thing, joy, peace,
Patience.
kindness, goodness.
Yeah.
And it really is the embodiment of what he truly is. And all you had to do is just see the thousands of people that were constantly after him wherever he went. He couldn't get away from the people, to the point where he had to okay, I'm going to go in the middle of a boat.
Yeah.
Because it was like a mob. So if his personality is one of such that crowds were just drawn to him, and I don't wonder if part of that too was because of his spirit being God, that our natural tendency, our natural spirit that wants to be created, that it was created by God because it's supposed to be with God, it just wants to be with him.
And yet there's ones who wanted to stone him.
Yeah, I know.
If I saw like a lifetime worth of fish come out of the water, I don't want to follow him. See what else he did. Or turn
There were a lot
water
of
to
people
wine.
there for the miracles.
Yeah.
But if you even notice,
It was all
after he ascended and the apostles and then how the church grew, it was a lot of disenfranchised people. It was a lot of minorities. It was a lot of, those are the people that got drawn towards the Christian faith because of who Christ was and what he taught his disciples.
And it's funny, as people, we tend to look at why are they following him? Why aren't they following them? Because they feel they don't need God.
I think we can take a page out of Christ's book, so to speak, when he's also known as the Bible. But even the fact that we can say he was not married. So what did he do with his life as a single person? He did not go around saying he's too much for them people.
I can't even.
once we get video cams, I think everyone is gonna laugh because
I think the best one that ever came out of to show his sense of humor, because he does have a great sense of humor. When he was walking down the street and he saw
Zacchaeus,
in the tree, and he looked at him and laughed and said, "Zacchaeus, come, today I go and spend it at your house. We'll sup together." And I'm just like, that is how he found people. And he knew, because he knew who he was.
Yeah.
He didn't have to who is that fool up in the tree? What are you doing? You get down here, you idiot. You're going to crack your head open. No, he was just like, Zacchaeus, come down from there and I'm going to go to your house tonight. Because he knew that was a person he wanted to be around. And that is how you want to be. You want to make yourself to be who people want to be around. Not the arrogant, I am better than y'all.
I'm with those people is what a lot of them said, or and act this way. And he didn't have an attitude about himself.
No,
I don't think he could ever say that. And
no,
it's hard to really describe him as anything except love. He just embodied it, he just radiated it, and he lived it. And if you're wanting to live that love, then you got to check the attitude.
But he did also know the people who had the attitude, who were the ones who said that they were better than everybody else, and he knocked them down in a peg or two. And they were the ones that wanted to kill him.
Because he revealed the truth.
you're talking about the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Yes, the root of vipers, he called them.
They were clever in their ways, though. They didn't explicitly say. They demonstrated it through actions.
They were constantly trying to catch him out.
Yeah. But even in the way that if we were this topic here, really, as much as we're talking about how Jesus was, I think this topic more is about how we as people can be like Pharisees, how we can act like we're better than everybody else. We know more than everybody else. We're smarter than everybody else. We don't need anybody else. Dress ourselves up and look really good on the outside.
One of the things with singleness is that you're dependent on yourself, so you learn to do everything yourself. But then you come out of that maybe 10 years later and you're like, I can do everything myself. And so it gets very prideful.
I don't need anybody. Part of that too is that it's really hard as a single person, especially if you don't have family nearby, to not want to burden other people who are not related to you. They're friends, you know them, but it's really hard to time when I went through a really bad time with my car. Had to get all 4 calipers replaced, thousands of dollars that I definitely did not have.
Mhm.
And having to ask the church for a little bit of help so that I didn't have to be weighed down with a debt I couldn't afford to pay off. It was more than I could deal with. Thankfully, God decided to help me out by giving me another job so that I can work 2 jobs and pay these bills off again. But it was very difficult for me at that time, and I was very depressed because I couldn't deal with it myself, and I had to ask for help.
And when you get
I
to
didn't
the
like
point of saying, I don't need no man or I don't need nobody else, then when there is a time when you need help, it's very humbling. And
Mhm.
you either choose not to get help and you get into even worse problems, or you go to get help, but you also have to eat humble pie. I don't think people are going to go around going, well, as long as you admit that you needed help, like, hopefully that's not the type of thing we want to do either. But there's that feeling
No.
internally of understanding, hey, I said all these things. It's not as true as I wanted
thought
it
it
to be.
was, yeah.
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 So keeping yourself humble in the sense of understanding that you aren't going to be able to do it all can lead to a bit easier time of being able to accept help when you need it. Not that it's always easy, but
No.
you think about coming down off of this high horse as a version of just thinking that you
Yep.
can handle it, but realizing you can't.
What is that? Philippians verse 2-3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourselves. Because I am all that. No, I'm not. We're all in the same boat, and that boat's got a hole in it. I'm sorry. Thankfully, Jesus got his foot on the hole, so it's all good.
Yeah.
The water's not in anymore. He's all plugged that hole.
Luckily. But yeah, he like there was nowhere for him to come down off of.
No.
Like, even though he was humiliated, even though he was put through all of that at the crucifixion, it wasn't like a coming up or coming down a peg or anything. You
No,
realize, understand that he allowed something to happen to him that should never have happened to him.
he wasn't knocked off his throne. He stepped down in order to enter into humanity, in order to help us and to lift us up out of the pit that we had fallen ourselves into.
And while we were still sinners.
He
And
died for us.
yeah. And so I think if we go forward with that attitude, whether we're married or not married, it is irrelevant. If we're
Yep.
going forward with the attitude of we're here to be the love and the light to others, then it has like your relationship status has nothing to do with you. It's
No.
not that
No.
you're the best or that no one can keep up with you or that you're ugly or that no one wants you. Like, it has nothing to do with that anymore.
And you may think that talking like that, saying that I'm ugly, I'm not worth it, that you think that you're being humble in that respect. You're actually not. It's a different kind of arrogance
And pride.
to say that you are that. Yeah, it's a different kind of pride that says that you are not.
You're
you know, that-
focusing on yourself and you're
You're so
creating,
yeah.
you're creating yourself as the center of the universe.
What about the opposite? What
The
about someone who is single, who doesn't want to interact with the world at all, who doesn't think they're better than anyone, who degrades themselves in singleness?
That's what
that can be, again, another type of pride where a lot of times what happens is like I think that by diminishing yourself as a person, you're diminishing like what God has created in you, that you are an image bearer. And just we shouldn't degrade other people. We shouldn't degrade ourselves. But there's also the sense of saying like the ones who used to like whip themselves and be like, I'm such a sinner. And then, but there was a pride in the fact that they would do that.
Complicated. You go to one end and you're like, consequences, and you go to the other end, it's consequences. So you gotta be diligent, and I gotta stay directly in the middle.
It's so hard.
Martin Luther did that. He put himself in a box because he couldn't escape from his sin. So he thought if he just put himself in a box, then he can't be tempted to sin. But I think he found that even in the box,
He took himself with him.
I hate to tell you this, but you're still with yourself.
But even then, the Pharisees misunderstood the law. Jesus declared, if you even think about murder, then you've committed murder
Hating
going if you lust in your heart, right? So even it seems that even Jesus said, even if you put yourself in a box and separate yourself from the world, you're still prone to be tempted and a risk of sin.
My late husband used to say the same thing. If I could just move to another place where nobody knows me, it ain't going to help.
moving, but he kept taking himself with him.
Yeah. So doesn't matter where you go, you always got to take yourself with you.
Yeah. A lot of it
Yep.
comes from internal. And another area that we can have, where's my thing here? An issue is that we say things like, I don't need anybody else because I want to focus on me. And it's
Just
just like,
selfish.
yeah, it's like I don't remember. Okay, I think Jesus like needed a nap and he wanted to pray to God, but like generally, I don't think he was like running around just going, man, I need to think about me. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of not thinking about him that happened because
Yep.
he was there to serve and to minister for those years that he was doing his ministry. And yeah, I don't think there was a lot of like self-indulgence going on there.
No. The verse that comes to mind for me when they were at the wedding and his mother came and said, they're out of wine. And he says, what has that got to do with me? It's not my time yet. She went to the servants and said, whatever he tells you to do it. And that was his first miracle, is fill those tubs up with water. And it was the best wine they ever had.
I always wonder what those wines would be. Like, how old were they? They were like infinite age.
Right? Like perfect vintage. Like, how did you do this?
He just said, just for last, we're already drunk. That could have been a totally selfish moment where he says, I ain't going to do anything for that. I am just going to, you all figure it out. I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He's like, all right, here's your miracle.
He chose to honor his mother in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think God too, honor God in that moment. And it didn't come about like in the sense of like it came about for the guy going like, where did this good wine come from? It wasn't like, here's like my boy, Jesus, I'm right here. I did it. Me. Like I didn't see a lot of that. Like a party trick. I don't know if we had been like changing water into wine, I think we would become the center of attention at the wedding. But I feel like I don't remember that part of the story coming up. Like it was like the guy was, like, where did this come from?
I had somebody say being friends with Jesus can you just imagine? You get your water turned into wine. You get your dead relatives coming back to life.
It's like
all the bread and fish you can ever want.
Infinite food.
And that's the thing. I think that was a lot of what the people who followed him were there for, what they could get out of it, I think. Or at least what David said, follow him around, see what other thing you're going to do next. But like when things got difficult, like how few followers were even there when he was arrested, let alone when he was crucified, being none.
And the funny thing is, and it's not funny as haha, but he took pity on the people that followed him. And that's why we see the miracles of the bread and the fish, because and he could have, we think in the selfish side of us, we're like, can you all go home? And his disciples said that, send them home so that they can go and feed themselves. And Jesus says, no, you feed them. We don't have anything, but it's how we think. We think that I don't have time for you. I'm more important than you are. So you go off and do your own little thing there and leave me alone. Jesus would never like that.
No. And he saw to their physical needs, even though that was the least of their issues. He still did miracles. Like he still healed. He still provided food. He still did these things, even though I'm sure there's just not, the understanding wasn't there of what the people really needed. But
didn't he do all these things out of faith of the person who asked? who's willing.
I think partly, but I think too, there's the part of him that was just like, he did want to relieve suffering that was there because he loved, like, who doesn't want to relieve suffering, right? In a sense where if you see something hurting that you want to help, there's that love that you want to give. But I think too, there was a sense that he saw that, like you saw it. Even some of the people who saw the miracles were like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They were like, this guy's performing miracles on the Sabbath. Like, it didn't matter what he did.
No, he's doing it from the devil.
Yeah.
They did. And his answer to that, a house divided against itself will fall. Satan's not going to perform miracles just to make you believe in God. That's weird.
Yeah. But like, you just see his giving of himself. Like, he definitely was not going around making the single time of his life about himself, about making himself a better person and working on himself and fulfilling his own goals of traveling the Middle East. I don't think he was trying to find himself traveling around the Middle East on foot with a bunch of people.
Without a home,
Yeah.
sleeping in the dirt, because that's the way to go.
Because that's what people say, take this time, make it like your own, make it this. And you're just like, but Jesus didn't take his single time, his single life, and make it about his personal, I don't know, development.
Your goal.
He was like,
I have goal. Oh, 3-year goal. Sorry.
your goal, I'm in heaven. I'm back in heaven. It's, I don't know. I just think when you look at your life, if you're saying like, what can I do with my single time that revolves around me, then you got the wrong attitude about your singleness. Same thing will happen when you get married. If you get married, you'll like go, now how am I going to use my married life to help me? That's if you're going to focus on yourself, then that's going to become what you habitually do, whether you're married or not.
I don't think it's wrong to work on yourself to become a better person.
No, I don't think that.
But the selfishness is where you do it to the detriment that your friends don't even know who you are anymore. They don't see you. Your family is just like, where'd you go? Oh, another vacation over 2 months off now. Okay. Where are you going? Oh, you're going to travel Europe. Oh, okay. Not that's a bad thing, but if that's all you do is the things for your own pleasure and not to
self-gratification, like becomes revolving around that. It doesn't mean you can't do it at occasion, but it's what you're revolving around, I think.
I don't think anyone can better themselves if they're in the state in which you describe. They have to have, in order for one to improve or better themselves, they have to have some humility.
Yeah, and I think what Monique is, she's not saying to avoid trying to, if you start to think, oh, I'd like to do something to better myself in the sense of learning more about empathy or emotional intelligence or anything that can make you a better person is a bad thing. It's just when that becomes your sole goal of, while I'm single, I'm going to think about me because I don't have to think about anybody else. That tends to be like an attitude that's out there.
Yeah, where the things that you do are more harmful than good. A lot of single people, you've got that single time. You're going to school, you're going to university, you're working on a career. It's not a bad thing. And a lot of your time when you're young is spent just filling your head with a lot of knowledge. But there are other people who work yourself to the bone, save up all your money to do the things that please you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think it comes down to what you feel your purpose is. If it, like, cause I've just seen, again, TikTok, I know it's a lot about just what you're saying and trying to be more flashy than the other person. But when they're saying their things like, I love my single time because I only have to think about me and all those type of things. Is there any time where the Bible's, thou shalt think of only thyself? And
the selfish one can be a difficult one for a single person because there's that fine line where, and I traveled that fine line and I tripped over it a few times because there are times where I was like, yeah, I like my single life. I have my condo. I have my own stuff. I have my own fridge, I have my own car. This is my spot, this is my place, and nobody can encroach upon my place.
Tell me what to do.
And God let me live in that for a little while, and then he moved me into a house with people
And lots of pets.
and lots of pets. So I don't really have a whole lot that's really in my room. It's all stuffed in my room.
take it all. I take it all.
And it becomes more where you start realizing that was okay for a time because it was a healing time for me.
Sometimes that's what it is, a healing time.
But there were also times where I had friends who would say, "You never phone. I never see you." It's worse now because I'm working all the time and I don't even see me anymore. I'm bent up. Good night. It's a fine line that we can travel with a single person to not become selfish with your time, because I thought my life was wanting to be surrounded by a spouse who was my everything. And that didn't happen. But I poured out my whole self trying to make it happen, even when I was in the relationship when it was so destructive.
Mhm.
And then when that relationship was over and gone, then I had to rethink. And then I still had to, I just need to be by myself to figure out where I am, because I didn't know who I was anymore.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just need to be a little selfish because you need to be able to ask yourself the hard questions. Like, why did I allow myself to get into such a situation that was so bad? What was it that I felt I needed so desperately that I had to hold on to it with both hands, to the point where I stopped being a human being and I lost who I was? And it took a long time for me to all of a sudden realize that, wait a minute, now I'm wasting my life in the stupid stuff. I'm thinking, who am I? It's okay to have that for a short time, but don't let it extend to 10 years and more where you're sitting there going, I don't know who I am. I'll take a short period of time and then start moving on.
Yeah. And then you start to open up your world again. Because there's times I think it's like you need to regroup. But then if you stay in that bubble, then you become so self-centered and self-focused in a sense. Everything outside, like it says in 1 Corinthians, I think it was 1 Corinthians 10:24, no one should seek their own good, but the good of others. And I don't think that necessarily means like you deny yourself good and live unhealthily, like in a poor relationship or whatever. You could probably picture things that you could do that would not be good. But it's talking about your focus point. If your focus point is just you, that can be very small universe. But if you focus yourself on others, then that is more what Jesus is doing. Like you see him focusing, he takes his alone time. He takes his refocus time, but it's not his focal point. God is his first, and then the people that he's there to minister is his second. And he's always there, and ultimately the time when he needed to regroup was when he was leading up to the time when he was going to give the most of himself for the crucifixion. If you need some regrouping before you move out to find a way to serve others, then take the time, but don't, like Monique said, don't overdo it. Or you can just find yourself in a very small universe.
Yeah. And my universe was very small for a very long time. It got to the point where I didn't even want to be around people. And I was starting to wonder what would happen if I just refused to leave my condo and just stayed inside all the time.
I would also warn of over-serving,
Yeah.
as the Pharisees believed they were serving, but not serving.
Yeah. And that was the other side of the coin. Let me tell you, because I did that. I overserved in the church.
Sometimes that comes from the fact that you're trying to avoid reality of what you're in, and that what your true feelings about what's going on in your life. And instead of embracing where God has placed you, you're trying to avoid where God has placed you in a sense.
You got to know your own heart. 'Cause it's, now that I think about it more, the lack of just staying in, like you said, Monique, staying in the house and stuff, you're not fulfilling love and mercy and compassion. But at the same time, you go out and you overserve, you risk the Lord saying, you risk being called up to heaven and the Lord saying, I never knew you, away from me, Satan.
Because you think you're
Now-
doing what the God wants, or you think you're serving God, but you haven't been, because you haven't taken that time to understand where God's calling you.
So now I've stepped right back. No more over serving. I will serve a little bit, and I like the little bit that I do, and it's not because
And I think that part of that comes from the idea that, especially for, I'm not sure about you, David, but Monique and I have a tendency to just, people ask us to do things, we're like, okay, because in our brains, we're probably, I'm assuming Monique's maybe a little bit like this, but if somebody calling me into work, I'm not in the taekwondo, but the other job, and other than the fact that I'm tired or I feel overworked, like there's no, to me, that's not a reason to say no. Like, I'm still physically capable of doing it. I'll do whatever it takes to be there. Instead of maybe saying I can't, and then they ask the next person who's off, and then they're okay to do it. But being hard time saying no, because we have a hard time seeing being tired or overworked as a true reason to say no.
The only issue with that particular thing, you're being compensated for the work you're doing, regardless if you're tired or not. I think the true question comes into play when you're asked to do something that is selfless. And how do you know when to say yes or no to that?
well, just like they're trying to get I was the church librarian for the longest time, and I had all these books and all this work, and I liked it at the time. But once it was over because of COVID, now all that shut down, and I sat back and went, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. And it was almost a relief. And then when people say, when are we going to get the library up and going again? And I'm like, I don't want to do it no more.
But that's got,
So-
but at the same time, you're like, one, you feel like you did do it, so people are expecting it of you. But two, also, it could be that God's saying you've done your time and it's time to someone else will step up. But
Yeah.
I think we have a tendency to like overcompensate. Even we don't want anybody else to be put out whatsoever if we're capable of doing something, even if health wise or even just knowing that's not what God's calling us to do. We're capable, so we must do it. And it's really hard to say
Yeah.
no.
And I still have that because I'm still being asked to help. So I don't mind the little bit once every 8 weeks or whatever with the other library. But now there's the big resource library that Pastor wants to put up. And I have no idea what that's going to look like. And there's somebody who's running it. And I'm just like, I don't really know when I have time to help. And they want me to help because I've got the knowledge of it, right?
But it
I don't
doesn't
know when I
matter.
have time.
Yeah. And I
Teach
think
someone to do it.
yeah. And like you said, like you are serving in ways in the church. So it's not like I'm not having anything to do to serve. You're choosing that God, you really wanted to work with the video side of things. And you actively went and sought position within that. And I think you really enjoy it.
The camera.
Yeah. But you have the area where you felt like you wanted to do, you went to do it. You felt like God's giving you the gifting to do it. And it's okay to say no to other areas because God's calling the church to work as a body. And we may overstep and take other people may be being urged by God to do something, and they take your quote unquote a person's willingness to do it as, oh, I don't have to do it. And then they're saying they no longer need me because this other person is doing it. Instead, if God's calling them to do it, they don't have that way out. Because as a human person, we're lazy in a sense where if we don't really want to do something, we will find any excuse not to.
And it's like you said, saying no is very difficult because half of me feels guilty for it. Like, why can't you help? You don't have anything else you're doing, right?
Exactly. And that can be a thing that happens with single people, especially because you have your daughter. So there's times when you actually have plans with your daughter. But there's other times where you're like, I don't have Sunday plans with my child or my family. I don't have my immediate family right here. So I don't have a quote unquote good excuse. And another danger of singleness is that we can put that guilt onto ourselves as saying, like, why I should do this because this person has more of a right to have it off or whatever than I do.
Working 2 jobs means that I actually don't really get a weekend. I have Monday morning until the meeting, which is at noon. And I have Tuesday morning until I have to be at the dojo in the afternoon. And I have Sunday. But Sunday is like church in the morning, and then if I've got my daughter and stuff. So I'm like, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I don't get home until later in the evening.
Mhm.
And then Friday and Saturday, by the time Friday and Saturday come around, like I'm tired.
Yeah. And we cannot,
I'm
we,
not-
as a single person, we can tend to put off our own like necessities.
Yes.
Maybe it was probably
Isn't
the
that-
opposite of over-serving kind of thing.
Yeah. And isn't that another form of selfishness where you think that you're indispensable? Or is that arrogant?
Maybe.
Pride? Oh, I think I fell again. Dog. Back my head on the cement one more time because we're still not getting it.
And yeah, so there's like definitely like being open to God saying no.
Yeah.
And then us being able to actually say the no to other people.
Yeah.
It took
Yeah,
me a
and
long
I
time to
think-
even redo it with WestGen with asking, like going back to 1 to 2 days a week. But actually, Pastor Justin was able to help me, like basically by saying, because I was feeling guilt. If
Yeah.
the only reason for me not to keep working this much is that I'm tired, is that a real reason? That's the thing that goes through my head, because especially when you grow up on a farm where no excuse is any excuse not to get, like the cows need milking and feeding and stuff. Like you can't be like, oh, I'm too sick to work today. Like it doesn't happen. Somebody has to work. And I saw my dad doing it my whole life.
And every farmer on the planet says that's true.
But for the pastor to tell me, because I kept saying I don't want to feel responsible. But then and at the same time I said, I know it's not my responsibility to make sure there's enough workers. But at the same time, I feel responsible. So we came to the conclusion of giving them a month, not just being like, starting next week, I can't work so much. In a month, I need to work less. So that one, I kept the responsibility of not leaving them shorthanded, but I also gave them the opportunity to figure out a solution without putting undue pressure on everybody. So it's trying to find those areas where we can say, so say you were like, all of a sudden you were like, I'm not doing anything at church. If you're finding a situation where you're over serving and you feel guilty, then like finding a way to do it in a way that's responsible and yet like giving other people the responsibility that they need to take on. That's theirs to take. That's appropriate for them to take on.
It's the same. I gotta figure out with this resource library just what exactly role I should be playing a part of. And as in a consultant idea, I can help if you're.
But even saying that, I did that with WestGen, and I got scheduled a way more days than I thought I would be. So I found for me with that specific was to lay down my boundary in a sense of saying 1 to 2 days a week, but being open if somebody needed to and was like, hey, I have this appointment. Can you work this day? And so if they came to you and said, oh, there's absolutely no way to work next Sunday, can you do it? As opposed to saying, I can do whenever. And they're like, we're making the schedule and there's no one there. We're just going to stick her in. Instead of actually trying to find another solution. But I don't know, that's just something that I found.
Yeah,
It's a work in progress.
It's still a work in progress. I'm not really sure where they're at with it because I know the fiction library is up and running and we've got lots of volunteers who are helping to sit at the desk. So it's not like I have to do it that often.
Hey, if you have a question, feel free to ask me. And that way your knowledge is available and yet you're not like adding more time to your schedule and you can answer it as you like have the appropriate time. That's just possibly if it brought up a whole other conversation. He just is sitting back and listening to us converse.
I have absolutely no idea what you guys are talking about again.
It's like these are just stories of services that you guys have done and not have done.
Our struggles as our personality / past experiences /
And it all centers around selfishness because you feel like if you say no, you're being selfish. So there's that.
yeah.
And we want to say that there are times when it is appropriate to say no, even if you feel like you're being selfish for it. And you don't have to have a really wild and crazy reason or excuse. Because sometimes it's just, I actually don't want to do it anymore. I'm done. God's calling me in a different direction now.
Oh.
Diverged.
Yeah, reasonable. We digress.
Sweetheart. And First Corinthians 7, which is where our ministry gets its name from, in verse 32 to 34, is I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife, and his interests are divided.
And it does later go on to say the same thing about women.
As much as when you're young, you think, if your heart is all thinking about being married and having kids and all the fun you can have with your kids, there is something that you lost when you're single, if that's all you're thinking about. Because there's so much that you can do with your life, that you can do for God, that you can do and enjoy as a single person without becoming arrogant, without becoming selfish, without becoming prideful. That is so beneficial for the kingdom. And we miss that boat when all we think about is, I have to be married to have kids. Especially that's not something that's even anywhere on your horizon at the moment. You're not dating. There's nobody you're interested in. Why are you setting yourself up to only think about, why am I not this way, when you have an opportunity right where you are right now to do something fabulous?
And it's, like you said, without getting arrogant or selfish or prideful, like any parent can tell you that once kids come along, everything in your life changes. Your focus changes, your priorities change, walking out the door changes. And so there is this unique time of being single. Unique, not more important. Unique time of singleness, unique time in marriage, equal and yet different. And that by not living actually present in the moment that you're in, you're living vicariously in some alternate future you wish you had, then you're going to forget about or miss stepping in where God's calling you to serve others, serve Him, to develop yourself with that in mind, developing in a good way, not in a selfish way.
I'm going to be the verse reader, aren't I?
There you go.
Galatians 5:13. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Yeah. We cherish our freedom, but use your freedom wisely, because it's so easy to just indulge the flesh, what the flesh wants, what I want, where I want to go, what I want to do,
what I want to buy.
I would argue if you indulge in the flesh, you're not actually free, because the flesh will ensnare you.
Yes, it will.
You have a feeling that you're free. You're free to do what you want, when you want.
Illusion.
Yes. So maybe we should end on that note, because it was a good recap. We thank you for joining us. We have one bit of exciting news, is that you can actually find our website. It is up and running online right now. It is live. www.route77.ca. ROUTE77.ca. So we are live now. So if you want to know who we are, what we believe, obviously you're listening to our podcast. You can find our podcast again. But yeah, it's up and running. So
yep.
Find her, contact us on Facebook, Instagram, X. Find us on all those places and let us know what you think. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let us know if you like what we're talking about. Anything. Let us know you're out there. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Hope to see you here next time, and hope that we left you with something to think about. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Route 77 podcast. We hope today's conversation encouraged you to reflect on how you view your single status and whether your attitude aligns with the humility and love that Christ exemplified. Remember, whether single or married, our calling is to serve and love others just as Christ did. Until next time, keep shining His light wherever you go, and remember to live your single life to its fullest.